Hello, very good morning from Indonesia, Jakarta. You are currently listening to the HumaniTalk inside ASEAN Podcast Series. This podcast is brought to you by Dompet Duafa in collaboration with Oxfam in Indonesia. I would like to greet our ASEAN member states colleagues who are in the region. You are maybe responding to the crisis, you are maybe doing disaster risk reduction, and wherever you are, please receive my greeting. My name is Dear NB Sinandang, Communication and Partnership Manager from Humanitarian Forum Indonesia. This is the second series of the four podcast series that Dompet Duafa and Oxfam in Indonesia will hold. And for this time, we will have a very interesting topic, which is namely underlying factors of challenging humanitarian intervention in ASEAN. As you may have known that humanitarian issues is still one of the pressing issues of the global development over the world. If you guys have seen the Global Humanitarian Overview, which is recently launched, you can see that the estimated people affected still increasing years by years, and then a lot of humanitarian financing will be needed in the coming years. And most of them will go to Southeast Asia region. While in here, inside ASEAN member states, we also have a lot of local capacity that needs to be capacitated and needs to be strengthened as well. And they are currently raising and how, the question how come they can be encouraged, they can be supported, and then the humanitarian intervention can go smooth and then can respond effectively immediately to the people affected. In this series of podcasts with me, I have two remarkable guest speakers. I would like to introduce to you. The first one is Pak Tomy Hendrajati, President of Human Initiative. And then the second guest speaker is Pak Ali Yusuf, the chairman of Humanitarian Forum Indonesia. And both of them are the conveners of Indonesian Development and Humanitarian Alliance, or we call as IDHA. And this topic will be interesting because we will talk about a lot of gaps or needs, and then what CSOs have been doing on the ground, and then what are their unique perspectives, seeing Indonesia will hold the chairmanship for ASEAN this year, and then how Indonesia can develop its leadership into advanced humanitarian competencies, advanced humanitarian programs, not only for Indonesia in the country, but also for the whole ASEAN member states, which is we are aware that the other neighbor countries are having a protected crisis, such as Myanmar, which has a lot of crises that's still currently still ongoing, and then also a lot of disasters caused by natural hazards. Not to mention that Indonesia is an exception. We are also a part of that, being as the country which is at high risk. So I would like to greet Pak Tomy and then Pak Ali, and then call on their perspective to see how the progress actually of humanitarian intervention in ASEAN. If we look at 5 years back, particularly, since we also have developed a lot of policies, we also in ASEAN have a lot of programs under several programs of humanitarian competencies, or making coordination more structured. And how do you see the humanitarian intervention in ASEAN member states back in 5 years particularly? Pak Tomy or Pak Ali?
Hey, Pak Tomy first, and I will add.
Okay, thank you, Ade and Pak Ali. Thank you for the inviting in this session. It's very special for us to be one of the speakers in this session. As our experience during the response in ASEAN country in 5 years back, especially in Myanmar, in Philippines, I think it's very interesting, very challenging because of, that the space of what we call it civic space in ASEAN mostly is not really wide for the activities. You know that during the conflict in Myanmar, of course we have several difficulties to access in the ground, but we know that between the countries in ASEAN is very what we call it a very close relationship between each other. So we approach to our governments to get like access in terms of like the umbrella of NGOs in Indonesia to deliver some assistance in the ground. And we are very lucky because of our government is very open and they engage us and we can deliver the assistance. And also it is such that we cannot doing by ourselves as NGOs, but we have to engage so many stakeholders, especially for the governments, meaning that we have working together with the government. And then also we are very respect because of actually in ASEAN countries there is a mainstreaming localized approach because of very rare among the ASEAN countries to call another member of ASEAN member to help during the crisis in the internally. For example, they support the origin of the NGOs to deliver the assistance by themselves. But as our because of we have like what we call it solidarity between the ASEAN country, between the people of ASEAN. So we have to deliver the assistance. I think there is some our experiences. Also, we have very unique space experience during we response for the collapsed dam in Laos. You know that mostly in ASEAN country, what we call it, the government is not really yet to open with like democratic country. So we have to partners with another NGO come from Malaysia, hand in hand to deliver the assistance in Laos, meaning that we cannot doing by ourselves to deliver the assistance in the ground. I think this our experience regarding the 5 decades of humanitarian situation in ASEAN country.
Thank you, Pak Tomy. You heavily mentioned a lot about collaboration and coordination. Is there anything you would like to add, Pak Ali Yusuf?
Thank you, dear, for having me this morning. I would like to add what Pak Tomy said about the situation of humanitarian action in Southeast Asia region. For me, it is similar with situation at the global level. Humanitarian actions in the Southeast Asia region were also influenced by situation of conflict, insecurity, as well as constraint on access. Yeah. So over the past 5 years in Southeast Asia region, humanitarian actions have been conducted more in response to disasters, natural disasters, conflict and also pandemic COVID-19. And for disaster response in general, for me, from my thing, the capacity of countries in the ASEAN region has not sufficient to manage the risk that will be faced by them. Indonesia is the third top country with the most disaster risk in the world, while Philippines is the first one in the world. Yeah. And regarding the conflict in Myanmar, I see that initially there will be significant progress after Indonesia and some ASEAN member countries giving support to resolve the conflict in Rakhine State. But after military coup took place in Myanmar in early 2021, the conflict has expanded to all regions in Myanmar, and potentially will become as a civil war. And this is what I think until now is big challenge for ASEAN community. And based on the Global Humanitarian Overview report in 2022, the total funding for humanitarian assistance in Myanmar only cover 28% of the total need. I think this is very important to be known. Apart from the conflict in Myanmar, in other ASEAN country member, namely Philippines, conflict is also still happening in Mindanao, which has also caused many casualties. In the last 5 years, the humanitarian crisis in Southeast region has also increased due to climate change, which has caused increasing the intensity of natural disasters. In addition, in the last 5 years, all countries in the world, including ASEAN member countries, have been preoccupied with handling the COVID-19 pandemic. Some Southeast Asian countries are the 20 countries with the highest COVID-19 case counts, with Indonesia and Philippines recording the highest numbers of cases and fatalities in the region. The positive thing related to humanitarian action over the last 5 years is increasing involvement of local actors from ASEAN countries in humanitarian action. Although this achievement need to be further improved in quality. So the local actors are able to play their role strategically. They are actually able to hold leadership and are given space to increase their capacity, and they are positioned on quite equal with the international community. Next, from me, the humanitarian actors must get adequate resources to be able to play themselves strategically as leaders, not only as technical implementers. This is from me, Mbak Dia.
Thank you. Pali, the discussion is getting more interesting because we are aware that we are living in a very high-risk region, right? But then, as you mentioned, with the localization approach, Pak Tomy has mentioned that earlier, and then local leadership is rising throughout ASEAN countries, and then we can also support to other countries as well. For example, not only in ASEAN member states where we support Philippines or Myanmar, or maybe Philippines to us, Malaysia to us, but also we can support the other regions as well, which is, I found it maybe sounds a little bit contradicting because we have high risk profile, but then we also have our own resources, our own capacity to also respond to other countries as well, or to other region as well, outside the ASEAN region. But then if we heard back in our first podcast, we get a conclusion that we are still not ready yet. We are still partially ready to respond to humanitarian problems in ASEAN. And then responding to that comment, how do you see the challenge in humanitarian intervention in ASEAN? What kind of factors that we need to be concerned in the first place? What kind of factors that we need to emphasize first in the first place? Please, Pak Tomy or Pak Ali.
So, Pak Tomy.
Okay, I think we know that it's about sensitivity between the ASEAN country. You know that when we talk about the sovereignty and then non-interference, about the protection issues internally in each country. I think we have to aware about these issues, so we can dealing with the kind of issues that the NGOs like us can deliver the assistance smoothly in the ground. But I remind regarding about the platform One ASEAN, One Response. I think it is very important for us to know that not only among the country of ASEAN to do this the commitment, but we endorse that please engage us as an NGO, part of the community of ASEAN, become One ASEAN, One Response. So it will be wider, what we call it, actors in the ground. So we can hand in hand to reduce the pain of the ASEAN community. I believe that if we can do like this, we can reduce what we call it like reluctant from the community, reluctant from the country, because of we know that we have to solidarity between the ASEAN country or ASEAN community. Another thing is about we have to what we call it to support with the about the stabilize of the political tension. You know that like refugees of Rohingya, it is influence to the outside of the country of Myanmar, meaning that if we can like to solve the problem together between the member of ASEAN country, so we can localize the situation better than now. When we follow that humanitarian is come first, so it is very important for the for us. Lastly, because of ASEAN is very prone disaster area by the natural hazard, like they mentioned before that. So we have to investing the budget for the DRR. I think it is very important for us to invest in this activities, this program, to strengthen the community, to reduce the what we call it, the impact of the disaster, but also as a commitment of the country to engage all of the actors in the disaster management, to strengthen the community in terms of disaster risk reduction. I think it is our opinion.
Thank you, Pak Tomy. Pak Ali, you have something to add?
Yeah, it's important issues that the attention in order to humanitarian actions can run well as follows. Number one is potential funding sources, and then humanitarian negotiations regarding access to provide humanitarian aids, and also role and contribution of local actors or local leadership, and also increased accountability. I think this is very important, and also security and safety of humanitarian actors. Yeah, it is important to pay attention of this issue in both global and also regional context. And to support and ensure this point can be met and implemented, there are important elements needed, including strong leadership, and also inclusive coordination architecture, and also quality resources. So the capacity of humanitarian actors is also very important to be noted. Humanitarian actors need not only technical capacity, but also soft skills, because they must be able to become leaders. They have to be as negotiators to open access and so to carry out humanitarian actions. And they must also have an understanding the situational context in which humanitarian action is carried out. In addition, humanitarian actions must also have capacity such as conflict management and knowledge of climate change and other related issues. I think this is from me, Mbak Dia.
Thank you, Pak Ali. We have very interesting discussion, and then My mind goes to Indonesian chairmanship in ASEAN for this year. I would like to get your unique perspective, how Indonesia, as the new chairmanship in this coming year, will make differently rather than the other chairmanship before, to promote what Pak Tomy has beautifully said, to engage NGOs as part of one ASEAN, one response, and also to invest in DRR. What kind of unique position of Indonesia that can offer? And then what kind of assistance or what kind of leadership program Indonesia can offer to make ASEAN a little bit more different in changing their humanitarian structure and interventions, please.
Yeah, Tomy or me?
Good. Silakan, Mas Ali.
Yes, this ASEAN was founded due to various similarities, yeah. Geographical location, culture, interests, and destiny, with the aim of forming a safe, peaceful, prosperous, and also stable of Southeast Asian region. It is the basic matters that must be upheld by all ASEAN member countries. Whatever problems, maybe Pak Tomy have mentioned about this, whatever problem occur in one of the ASEAN member country, other members are obligated to support and assist. If not, they must be prepared to be impacted or affected. With the current ASEAN chairmanship position, I think this Indonesia must be able to optimally use its mandate and authority to maintain ASEAN solidarity and solidity to support the achievement of ASEAN goals. So ASEAN's relevance will continue to be discovered and felt by the member countries. I think from me, but yeah.
Solidarity and solidity, yeah. Pak Tomy, you have something to add more?
Just maybe little bit, adding the suggestion. We know that we have similar, like Palis mentioned, that we have similar culture. So, meaning that our leadership of Indonesia in ASEAN chairman, we can use like what we call it, family leadership. I believe that this approach will be powerful to engage the leaders of ASEAN country. So we respect to the culture. We can discuss heart by heart, even it is not difficult, but we believe that we can touch this situation to engage, to attract the leaders, the leadership of the ASEAN to become together. And also we believe that as like a brother, big brother in ASEAN. So we can use this influence to influence the ASEAN leader to become, whether to strengthen between the country, to open the space for the local actor, for the NGOs and so on. I think that's a little bit the
Yeah. Yeah, there. Yes, I would like to add some things. Don't let ASEAN lose its relevance as an association in the region with its vision, mission, and establishment goals. I think it's very important because ASEAN is enabled to support the resolution of every humanitarian problem exists in the region. Because every domestic problem or crisis from each member country then will impact on the region, not only surrounding country, but also for to the region. So Indonesia's current chairman now, must be able to consolidate and mobilize all ASEAN member countries to maintain and enhance ASEAN relevance for safe, peaceful, and prosperous and also stable of the Southeast Asian region. Yeah.
Thank you. Pak Tomy?
One sentence about we can make like a model for the another region. That ASEAN is what we call it, very powerful, strong solidarity, and also stable than another region. So we can like togetherness to facing the what we call it the difficult situation, especially for the natural disaster in the region. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. This is important to think about ASEAN as the association, and then we are as part of one community because we promote one ASEAN, one response, and then we share also the high risk profile area because of this many hazards or risks that we have. But then I would like to challenge our thinking. How about if we do not collaborate? How about we do not work hand on hand with each other because of one issue or because of one thing or another? What can happen if ASEAN communities and CSO or NGOs do not work hand in hand? What kind of disruption or challenge you think we will face in the future?
In the modern era, we should together to solve the problem together. We can share the resources between each other. We can fulfill the gap between each other. We have experience, especially for the Indonesian NGOs community, when we hand in hand together with at least 24 NGOs. We can deliver the assistance to our neighboring countries. We can pull the resource very big, then we are lonely. And of course, we believe that collaboration is the key to solve the problem in the region. Even not only for between the NGOs, but also with the another stakeholders, private sectors, governments, military, and so on.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, for the regional context, ASEAN members countries must be able to consolidate all of their resources, including GSOs. This is for me, because to deal with a humanitarian crisis, it is impossible for the state to stand alone and be able to handle it. Likewise, for the global context, we know the United Nations also stated that it was unable to handle everything without the support of all parties, including GSO. Therefore, in the future, several institutions at the regional level, such as ASEAN, must be able to play their role, not only in coordinating and mobilizing at the country level, but also being able to invite GSOs and also their entity, other entities to be actively involved and support any humanitarian actions at the regional level.
Thank you, Pak Tomy, Pak Ali. I would like to also ask a little bit of challenging question. You see that, you have so many wide network across the Southeast Asia region, and then you also have worked together with CSOs or NGOs in the ASEAN member states. And then, do you think that CSOs or NGOs can confidently support the vision of being as ASEAN communities in terms of disaster management and humanitarian assistance? Because as we are aware of, some country, they hesitant to work together with the government, if we can say, but then some others have a very good relationship with the government. But to think about that collectively, are we going to say that we are confident to say that we, as the CSOs and NGOs, can support the ASEAN communities to make that vision, to engage and to promote the local leadership, to promote the solidarity, the solidity that you have mentioned that before, being going forward. So are we going to confidently say that?
I think Indonesia is with the chairmanship of ASEAN should raise this issue that the ASEAN member countries must be encouraged and invite or include all of their resources, including CSO, because as I mentioned before, that it is impossible for the state to stand alone, and be able to handle disaster events and also like crisis, Nidia.
Thank you, Pak Ali. Pak Tomy, you would like to add something?
Yeah, of course. I agree that Indonesia as chairman in the ASEAN now have to make like an example to engage local leadership, to engage the CSOs. And please invite the NGOs outside of Indonesia to settle the communication between each other. And then also invite the government to facilitate the communication between the CSO and the government. As you mentioned before that, maybe there is several NGOs or CSO reluctant to communicate with the government. From now, we support and we what we call it. We hope that Indonesia can facilitating those kind like the activities to invite the ASEAN as a community, not only the NGO or CSO, what we call it, certified or recommended by the government, but it has to invite the various NGO or CS. So it is the key, because you know that we are very diverse. We are very rich with the resources, like Pak Ali mentioned before, that we can mobilize the resources of the CSO NGOs to dealing with this humanitarian crisis in the region. I think this.
I will add maybe a little. If the ASEAN community is enabled to invite other parties, other institutions, especially CSOs, the humanitarian crisis at the regional level will not be handled properly, and ASEAN as an association of countries in Southeast Asia is becoming less relevant. One more becoming less relevant.
Thank you, Pak Tomy, Pak Ali. Pak Tomy, in particular, you have make a proposal. You have made a call, I think, for invitation to Indonesian government because of this new chairmanship. But I think it's very important to think about the civil society position in this region, because we are different than before. If we think about the 5 years back, in particular, related with my first question, we now have so much to offer. We're now growing in numbers, we're now growing in capacities, but then we have to make it clear to the ASEAN communities, in particular with the government. If, let's say, we are engaged into the system, if, let's say, we're engaged into the humanitarian structure, and then what do you think we can offer as civil societies? What do you think we can make contribution to make this humanitarian system balance between the government and CSOs? What kind of position that we can offer to the system? Please, Pak Tomy and Pak Ali. Oh yeah, I can mention also not only the offer in terms of human resources or network, but also are we there yet at the financial system? Are we able to also support the financing of humanitarian intervention in ASEAN? Please, Pak Tomy and Pak Ali.
Okay, we know that every stakeholder has limitation. We can do everything as personally, we can stand alone like Pak Ali mentioned before. As an NGO, as a CSO, we work in the ground. We dealing directly with the communities, meaning that we have had to reach them. It is the first. The second one is in terms of financing. As an NGO, also we have experience how to mobilize the finance resources from the public with the innovative way how to mobilize this kind of public financial from the community independently. I remember that in ASEAN region, we have so many experience. We have so many lessons learned. For example, like the Philippines, they have experience to mobilize the diaspora, their diaspora in the world. It is their, what we call it, their strength to mobilize the social fund from their diaspora in the world. And also they can engage the corporate sector, can hand in hand to solve the problem in humanitarian crisis. In Indonesia, for example, also we have strength to mobilize the public financing based on the religious, Muslim, Christian, and so on. We can use the digital financing. So many crowdfunding here. We can collect the fund in short time to deliver the assistance during the crisis. Also, we have very good relationship with the corporate. Also, we have very good partnership with the communities in the ground to mobilize the fund. And also, we have experience also in Malaysia. Our colleagues in NGOs in Malaysia also very active to mobilize a fund from the community. And also, they deliver the zakah collection from the government to the respective NGOs. And the third one is about the accountability. I think it is also very important for us as NGO, as CSO, to mainstream the accountability, to manage the public fund, to manage the humanitarian financing. So I think it is very important. And the last one is about the individual capacity and also the organization to manage the resources. If we can manage effectively, we can deliver the assistance, we can manage the program activity effectively to the right holder in the ground. I think this is our opinion regarding what is the contribution of the CSO during for the ASEAN with the government in ASEAN. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Tomy. Pali, please, if you have something.
Yes, I want to add something from Pak Tomy. Yes, civil society has huge resources potential to support humanitarian financing system because civil society is an important entity and has capacity for the availability of humanitarian financing. And in the humanitarian financing system, there are at least 4 funding schemes that can be utilized. The state budget, and also fund from private sector, donation from public or community, and also economic absorption. So other potential resources of funding, for example, from public fund, including donation, infak, sodako, CSR, insurance, and others, must be utilized to support humanitarian operation or humanitarian activities. There is a need of financing system of disaster management or humanitarian action or activities that is integrative, effective, efficient, and also sustainable. The system will allow involvement of all parties, including community, to support financing in disaster management and humanitarian activities. Pooling fund is one model that can be developed to open up opportunities for all parties to contribute. The pooling fund mechanism actually has been started to be implemented on environmental issues, and I think it can be considered for adoption to disaster management and humanitarian activities. So don't let the gap of humanitarian costs be borne by disaster-affected communities and the economy at the local level due to decreased income or increased price of goods and also services. Inflation as a result of infrastructure damages and hampered economic activities of the community. The pooling fund is like a collected fund from various sources, such as state fund, CSR, philanthropy, and others. This fund can be used not only for disaster response, but also for mitigation, preparedness, and also post-disaster recovery. And this pooling fund mechanism can be applied both in national and subnational level, adjusted the situation and condition. And this pooling fund will act as an endowment fund for the benefit of disaster management, pre, during, and also after disaster, and also humanitarian action. The key regarding pooling fund is the government is able to create a clear framework and a good mechanism to convene or making trust all parties, especially civil society or community, to contribute on the provision of humanitarian fund through the pooling fund model. If this pooling fund can be realized optimally, the problem of gaps in humanitarian funding or humanitarian financing, especially in the region, will meet the answer. The highly generous nature of the Indonesian people is an opportunity for the realization of the pooling fund to reduce the gap in humanitarian financing in Indonesia. Once again, the key is making trust through a good and a clear framework and also mechanism. This is from me, Mbak Diar.
Thank you, Pak Ali, Pak Tomy. You have shared such an insightful discussion with us, and then it is a regret that our discussion is coming to an end. I think 30 minutes is not enough for us to talk about humanitarian programs, interventions, especially when we talk about ASEAN member states. It will be an interesting discussion to continue, but then because of time limitation, I think we must wrap up this discussion, and we will continue that to another series of podcasts. But we would like to get your closing remark by each Pak Tomy and Pak Ali. Please share your closing remark to reflect on our discussion today. Pak Tomy first. Thank you.
Our respective leader, Pak Ali, please.
Okay, Pak Ali first. Thank you.
Yes, I will mention what I mentioned before. I will talk with what I mentioned before. With the current ASEAN chairmanship position, Indonesia must be able to optimally use its mandate and authority to maintain ASEAN solidarity and solidity to support the achievement of ASEAN goals. So ASEAN's relevance will continue to be discovered by the member countries of ASEAN. And the second is no single funding model is capable to meet the funding needs of humanitarian activities or humanitarian action. Therefore, it is necessary to develop a model and system of funding that provide opportunities for all parties to participate on and contribute. A pooling fund scheme that collects funds from various parties need to be developed to fund humanitarian needs that continue to increase due to the growing risk all over the world. Thank you, Mbak Dear. Please, Pak.
Pak Ali, ya. Just maybe one sentence, ya. No one left behind to strengthen the solidarity through collaborative action. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Tomy and Pak Ali. That is a bold statement. No one left behind. Yes, we need to think about that. Thank you for being here in the podcast, Pak Tomy and Pak Ali. I'm sure that we will have another fruitful discussion, interesting discussion with you later on. But then I need to wrap up this discussion, and I'm not there to quote everything that you have beautifully mentioned. I can just summarize it briefly. Well, we do talk about humanitarian interventions in ASEAN back in 5 years in particular, and then we see that now we have a good collaboration between humanitarian actors, CSOs also growing in numbers, in capacities. And then with the global agreement, now we are mainstreaming localization approach. And then we also have experience in giving foreign assistance, not only Indonesia to another country, but also another country to Indonesia, not only in Southeast Asia region, ourselves, but also we are coming out. We are going out to respond to another region as well. And then talking about ASEAN, we also have aware that we have a famous tagline, One ASEAN, One Response, which is now we put that expectation to Indonesian government leadership this year on how to make that tagline be relevant to NGOs by engaging NGOs to be part of that system, to invest also in disaster risk reduction, to also think about strong leadership, inclusive coordination structure, not only by one party, but also to include all the humanitarian actors in the region. But also we need to think about our capacity as well. We need to have a soft skill in program management, as Pak Ali has mentioned earlier, conflict management. And then we are agree that we cannot stand alone because if we do not work hand in hand, then there will be trouble. There will be a collapse in humanitarian structure in ASEAN region. We do have so many experience and we do have so many contributions that we can offer to make it into that system, particularly we as CSOs and NGOs. If we talk about humanitarian financing, Pak Tomy has shared the experience of Philippines, for example, or Indonesia, for example, with our religious funds, with our digital financing, with our good relationship with the communities, with the faith leaders, in particular with the corporate, and then also talking about mainstreaming accountability that we continually promote because we respect to the core humanitarian standards, we respect to the code of conduct of the Red Cross and Red Crescent societies. And then the last one that Pak Ali has interestingly mentioned about we need to think about the mechanism of pool fund as a one-based model that we can learn from the environmental colleagues into the disaster risk reduction and response sector. And then how the Indonesian government, with that lot of expectation, can make it happen. I think it will be enough to cover all the interesting discussion that we have. Thank you so much, Pa Ali and Pa Tomy, for sharing
Welcome,
your insightful experience and insightful thinking. I cannot wait to discuss with you more in the future. And then we can also invite different ASEAN CSOs, colleagues in the next podcast series. I think that's all. Thank you, audiences, for listening to our discussion. Hopefully this podcast bring you something to think about and then also to act upon based on our solidarity or solidity, based on our belief that we can have a strong leadership in the region, and then we can also lead our own response as well and provide assistance to our own communities as well. And see you in the next podcast series. This is me, Dear Sinandang. Thank you so much for having me as the moderator of the discussion. And I would like to close this podcast on behalf of Dompet Duafa and in collaboration with Oxfam in Indonesia. Thank you so much.